So my carnivore labs are in. 90 days later, here's what changed. So this is why I started carnivore. This is what I actually cared about. Insulin, inflammation, body composition, metabolic clarity. Not just losing weight, but reversing the root cause of dysfunction. And that's why I went on carnivore. And after 90 days, I ran comprehensive labs, metabolic, lipid, hormonal, and inflammatory panels, as well as body composition monitoring over the last month and comparing the first week to the last week of the month. So today I'll show you exactly what changed, not just the numbers, but what they mean for your health. As you can see from this graph, my A1C before was 5.6. My A1C after 90 days was 5.3. So went from borderline diabetic, considered pre-diabetic, to a normal A1C level, no longer pre-diabetic. And let me just clarify for you. Before is April 11th, 2025, labs from that date. And then after is 90 days later, or 7/11/25. And I'll be posting those labs in the comments below, and let you see the actual lab work and check out the numbers for yourself. It was kind of too hard to line everything up properly. The number of pages didn't match up. Things were in different places, so it just made sense to use these graphs. My fasting insulin level in both cases was pretty on the low side. And this kind of surprised me a little bit when we saw the pre-op ones, because I expected my fasting insulin levels to actually be quite high. But in both cases, they were on the low end of normal. And we also have to take into account that insulin levels do ebb and flow. They do vary throughout the course of the day. So unless they were drawn at the exact same time, and even there's some possibilities for some variation that's normal, we're going to get some slight changes. C-peptide, which was pretty low at 0.9, now up 1.7, which pretty much almost doubled and is now in the optimal range. And the LPIR score, which is a sign of insulin resistance, went from 49 before, which was extremely high, to really less than 25. And less than 25, whether it's 5, 10, 15, the LPIR score can't monitor anything less than 25. So everything below 25 gets lumped together. So what this proved in those 90 days was exactly what I was shooting for, where I went from being very insulin resistant to being incredibly insulin sensitive. Now, my let's try that again. HOMA-IR score also improved dramatically. This was established from a fasting insulin and glucose levels. This shows, or this interpretation is that there was metabolic reversal. My body went from being insulin resistant to insulin sensitive in only 90 days. And there was a study in Journal of Clinical Lipidology and Nutrients in 2001, which showed that a low-carb animal-based diet can normalize fasting insulin, reduce hepatic insulin resistance or liver resistance, and reverse early-stage diabetes without drugs. All right, so let's get to section number 2, inflammation, the silent driver. And so here are a couple inflammatory markers, CRP, or C-reactive protein. Before it was 4.2, now down to 3.5, which demonstrated decreasing, but still a little bit on the high end of normal. Another marker of inflammation, ESR, adipocyte sedimentation rate, went from 14 to 10, so that improved. Homocysteine improved from 8.6 to 9.5, or actually remained stable, I should say, not really improved, but remained stable. And ferritin levels went from 261 to 278, which is also stable and non-iron overload. So if we look at this interpretation, inflammation dropped pretty much across the board. CRP or C-reactive protein trending downward, ESR improved, as I mentioned, no inflammatory red flags, and homocysteine in the safe range. Ferritin stayed stable, which is evidence of lack of oxidative stress or iron overload. All right, let's get to section number 3, body composition. And I'll drop the body composition monitoring and the comparison from week 1 to week 4, which is the last 30 days of my 90-day carnivore. Unfortunately, the dietitian that I see, his body composition scale had broken, malfunctioned. He had to get a new one, got a super high-tech, really cool one, but took it's a custom order and took a little while for him to get it. So I only have body composition monitoring for the last 30 days of the total 90 days. But what we saw in the body composition was a decrease in body fat percentage, an increase in lean mass, decrease in visceral fat, BMR calculated to 1553 kilocalories, and BMI of 26. So despite only losing 1 pound, I did gain lean mass and dropped body fat. And there was, in the Journal of Nutrition in 2022, showed that protein diets like carnivore preserve lean tissue and improve body composition even without exercise. And DEXA scans do confirm this visually. The composition that I'm getting now is a form of a DEXA scan. Less visceral fat, more lean mass, improved metabolic flexibility. So let's go to item number 4, lipid panels. This one was a little bit surprising to me in a couple ways. First of all, I have to say, I did expect total cholesterol to go up, which it did. I did expect LDL to go up as well, which it did. I did expect an improvement in HDL, a decrease in triglycerides, which I did see, and I'll go over those with you. The one thing that I was surprised about is this lipid panel that we did measures LDL particle size and also the number of small LDL particles. And what I expected to see was a decrease in the particles, the small particle size LDL, and an increase in LDL size overall. We did see that increased LDL size, but the number of small particles, which are the inflammatory particles, which can be triggering for cardiovascular disease and atherosclerotic plaques, my small LDL particles did go up in number, so that was a little bit concerning. But when you factor all of these things in, so let's talk about a couple things. Let's talk about ApoB and ApoA. You can see both of those numbers did go up. ApoB is the number of atherogenic particles, so the number of particles that can cause atherosclerotic plaques. ApoA is a major structural protein of HDL. So studies show that ApoB to ApoA ratio is a better marker of risk alone than is LDL by itself. So my ApoB to ApoA ratio was slightly better than the increased in LDL. LDL-C, as you can see there, went from 182 to 306. That's the number of that's the amount of cholesterol inside the LDL particles, whereas the LDL-P counts the number of LDL particles, and elevated LDL-P matters most when insulin, inflammation, and HDL to triglyceride ratios are poor, not in isolation. So that number did go up quite a bit and went above the top number that they measure. So that by itself, if you looked at LDL and total cholesterol, which I don't have on this chart, but total cholesterol did go up as well. Most physicians, most medical professionals would say, uh-oh, you better get on a statin right away. But the main thing that I want to kind of point out here is that the triglyceride and HDL ratio, which is far more predictive of cardiovascular disease actually improved by quite a bit. The ratio, you want that under 2, and my ratio went from 2.2 to start prior to carnivore down to 1.3, which is a strong proxy for insulin sensitivity and a much better indicator for cardiovascular disease, meaning that according to that ratio, I'm not at as high a risk as if you just look at LDL, even if you look at the small LDL particle numbers going up. So LDL particle size did increase as well. So it went from 20.7 to 21.4. And the larger LDL particles are more buoyant. They don't clog up the arteries. And they're really more of a longevity measure than really a risk for atherosclerosis. ApoA, which is protective for for HDL protein, did rise significantly. So that's a protective mechanism that's actually a benefit. And inflammation and insulin normalized. So this profile fits the pattern for someone who's a lean mass hyperresponder. I didn't expect to be a lean mass hyperresponder, but that's what it shows. And low carb individuals with high LDL, lean mass hyperresponders are people with low carb people with high LDL markers, but with favorable cardiovascular risk markers, like I've mentioned. So the lipid panel is a bit complex. I know that there are some confounding factors here. I would like to see my small LDL particle number go down, and maybe we'll see that at 6 months or at a year. I would like to see the LDL particle size go up a little bit more. But the ApoA going up, I'd love to see ApoB go down. I don't know if that'll actually happen over time. But I personally am not too terribly worried about the LDL by itself, or the total cholesterol for that matter. Now, I will say I'm not a physician. I'm not telling you that you should treat yourself this way. I'm not telling you if you had labs similar to mine, not to discuss it with a physician. And I am about to see a new PCP, and I will go over these results with them and explain, and have a good discussion, a good educated discussion on LDL and the risk of cardiovascular disease and whether I should be on a statin or not. But we'll go over that. So just be cautious when you see numbers that aren't necessarily favorable. This is a discussion that you should have with your physician, and I'm not here to tell you to avoid the statins at all costs. Just make sure that that's necessary. The only other thing I'll leave you with when it comes to lipids and cardiovascular disease, hyperlipidemia or elevated cholesterol and LDL levels are not a disease process by themselves. What is the disease is atherosclerosis or clogged arteries. So if you really want to look for the disease and not these sort of indicators or markers, then really looking at a calcium score would be the best way to do that. And that is certainly what I'm going to discuss with my new primary care physician when it comes to, if there's concern as to whether or not I'm at cardiovascular risk. Okay, so let's move on to section number 5, kidney functions and electrolytes. So my BUN remained in the normal range. My creatinine remained in the normal range, relatively unfazed. The BUN to creatinine ratio did slightly go up, but not in any significant manner, and still pretty much in the normal range. My CO2 did remain relatively unchanged. A slight increase, which actually is a healthy buffering status. And the CO2 is important to show that there's not kidney malfunction. And, kidneys are a major player in acid-base balance. And if you have a little elevated CO2, not elevated, if you have normal CO2 levels, you're showing that you're not getting acidic changes. And my GFR glomerular filtration rate, or the ability for my kidneys to filter out toxins, is still within the normal range. So what this basically demonstrates is no sign of kidney-induced kidney strain. CO2 remains stable, so no metabolic acidosis. Um, Kidney function was intact despite a high protein diet, which a lot of people will tell you is a risk for damaging your kidneys, which is utter nonsense. The American Society of Nephrology supports that in healthy individuals, high protein intake does not harm renal function when hydration is adequate. And I'm always careful to make sure that my hydration is adequate. Okay, so let's get to the next one. This one was really pretty fascinating. We weren't really sure what to expect on this one. So let me preface by saying, as far as testosterone goes, within the last month, when I was looking at body composition monitoring, right, that was only in the last month of my 90 days of carnivore, um, I did only exercise the first 2 months. I did resistance training or weightlifting in the first 2 months, and I had to give it up in the last month because I had a herniated disc. I had an injury. I had to back off the weightlifting. And so the vast majority of this testosterone increase that you see here is actually without really building in weightlifting or resistance training. And, there were 2 months that I did do that, but we didn't have composition monitoring to measure up to. So I got to imagine that this was primarily dietary change and not based on resistance training. Because the first 2 months I did do resistance training, but the last month I didn't. And so presumably this is mostly as a result of diet. Now, there could be some exercise influence here, but mostly I have to think this is dietary in nature. So my testosterone was actually reasonably good before. It was 480. I'm a 56-year-old male. So that's actually a pretty good range. But after 596, which is really fantastic for someone my age. So again, despite no resistance training, testosterone rose by over 100 nanograms per deciliter. And there were 2 studies, Andrology in 2021 and Nutrients 2020, which link high saturated fat and cholesterol intake with normalized testosterone levels in men, especially when insulin drops. And that was the biggest thing that I saw was a drop in insulin resistance. So I have to go back and say that these are my final thoughts on episode 86 of the Obesity Project. My carnivore labs are in. Here's what changed in 90 days. Well, I did reverse insulin resistance. My A1C dropped. My inflammation was down. My lean mass was up. Triglycerides went down. HDL went up. The good cholesterol, of course. Testosterone went up. No kidney strain. Now, the only thing that I'm not 100% sure of is LDL did go up, including the number of small inflammatory particles. However, with favorable context. So every system got better, metabolically, hormonally, compositionally. This isn't a fluke. It's what happens when you remove dietary noise and let your body heal. So, sorry, I'm still sharing my screen. So I have to say, don't forget, here on the Obesity Project, we're cutting through the myths and getting to the root. And definitely stay tuned for the next one. The next video is going to be something special. Will my heart explode on carnivore thanks to elevated cholesterol? We'll break down the LDL panic and why context, not cholesterol, determines risk. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a little something. Check out my labs. Check out my body composition. See the numbers for yourself. This was sort of a review of those numbers, but I'm actually going to go ahead and show you the actual lab work. So you can check that out. And thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, like, share, comment. Share this with people who are obese, who need to change their diet, need a satiating diet that will make the kind of changes that you see in the lab work here, as well as my previous videos where I talked about how most of the changes were positive nature. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.